So in the last video I was tearing down a fork, but some of the footage got lost, and so I missed out some of the parts that would be useful. Plus I actually didn't really go into some of the details. I thought it wasn't necessary, but yeah, I think I'll go into them now. So I've got this other fork, and the one that I was working on previously I still have to work on again. I'm starting again with this one. This fork was sent to me by a friend. He said, oh, you know, it's for parts, it's got some parts broken or something like that. I can't exactly remember what, I didn't pay much for it, so I guess we're gonna tear into it and take a look. And this is often what will happen if somebody sends me a fork and they won't really know much about it, and you know, I have to delve into it. So the first thing we probably want to do is take out the air, because this one is a Super which has air in it. This one actually has no air in it, so I'm just going to take the valve off. Removing the valve makes it a lot easier to work with, because otherwise you end up basically with this suction when you're trying to separate things. So that's the air out, and then we'll use the pin spanner to remove the top of the unit. And generally these do come undone fairly easily, at least this part. So it's just a bit fiddly always with the pin spanner, but yeah. One thing you don't want to try and do, you don't want to undo this. This is not a bolt. It's just press fit onto a shaft, and the shaft is what controls the lockout. So if you try undoing that, what you're doing is potentially ruining parts of the damper, and you're definitely not taking it apart. I've had people say, oh yeah, I managed to undo it and a load of oil came out. Well, yeah, that shouldn't happen. So, got the telescoping part telescoped down, so then you can actually reach the top, and you can see here there's these divots where the castle tool will fit. And so the castle tool slots into there. Sometimes you can undo it by hand. In this case I can. Otherwise I would attach the ratchet to the end. But where possible I like to just use my hands to avoid unnecessary torque. You don't want to have a situation where you are putting so much pressure on something and it causes something to break. Should, once it's released, come off fairly easily. So here we've got the damper unit and the spring on the end. It all looks a bit messy. I can already see there's some damage on the shaft itself, so that one will probably be cannibalized for parts. And now we want to delve into the actual telescoping unit itself. So again with the pin spanner, and this time on the bottom of the telescoping unit, and again nice and free. Sometimes these can be very hard. I've had situations where it's taken me a week to manage to release one, and I've had to use a pin spanner of the type that's for grinding discs, and attach that onto here with some clamps to hold it in place, and then attach that to a long beam, and then bolted all of this down, and it's taken a lot of pressure. Thankfully this one came off fairly easily. Now the other part that we do need to release is in here. There is a, let's see if I can get, maybe for the other camera. In here there is a little ring that clips onto the races. So sometimes I can get it out with just one of these picks. Sometimes I need a few more. Depends. Seeing that it's on camera, it's probably going to take forever. Okay, that's 2 out, 3, there we go. So here we've got this. This holds the races in place. So now this is actually free to slide up. As soon as I pull this up, everything is going to fall out. So we don't really want to do that right away. What I want to do is grab some paper, wipe these races, and these are the inside races. These are the ones which are basically they are placed at certain tolerance levels, so there's different thicknesses of these races, and when these are manufactured or when these are put together, the person who puts them together, I guess, they measure the tolerances and they put in the right races depending on the tolerance. So you don't want to get those mixed up because that can lead to it not sliding smoothly. Generally the inner races, the outer races, which are on the inside of this tube, they are all the same width. But the inside races, these smaller ones, they tend to not be all the same width. I mean, maybe they are sometimes, but often they're not. So we can see as I start to pull this out, here's the races looking very sorry for themselves. And these are the bearing cages, needle rollers, sorry. And so as I pull this out, the whole lot is just going to fall apart on the table. There we go. And so then we have the retaining collar, and we have basically a bump stop here at the bottom of this. I'm just going to put these to one side. And then we've got the 4 inner races, which are now numbered, so I know which order they go in, because I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4 on them, always in the same order. I mean, whatever works for you, right? That's the order that works for me. Then these are the needle bearings, needle rollers, and these actually look in pretty good condition. I will be removing them all, one by, every single one of these will come out of this cage and it'll go through parts cleaner and stuff. And then in here, we've got 4 of the outer races, and these will generally, as far as I've seen, are always the same thickness. I used to number them, but I've never come across one that has different thicknesses. So it's generally not a problem. Okay, so that is the fork partially torn down. I then want to remove the cylinder that's in here. So I'm just going to grab a suitable bit for hammering on the piston, on the cylinder. So this one is very rusty in there, so I might spray a bit of Plus gas down just to help it along. And a bit of Plus gas down here. It's all looking very mucky. I'll let that sit for a moment. That piston is very rusty. I'm going to leave it a bit more. And whilst that is thinking about what it's done, I can open this up and get some of the liquid out. I say liquid, it's probably not oil anymore. It's probably oh. Okay. It's very stiff on there. I need to get something else to hold on. It's very, very stiff. Okay, there we go. I could see some bubbles coming out. I wonder if there's actually it's got trapped air inside it. It can happen sometimes. Air gets past the seals. Somebody's putting too much air into the actual into the fork, trying to overcome some issue, and they just keep putting more and more air in, and it gets past all the seals and it ends up stuck inside the damper, and the oil just cavitates and turns into slush, and it works even worse. And then okay, let me get my glove off. I'm really disappointed with these cameras, which just stop recording and they don't actually show anything. They don't. Gotten the oil out, and I mean, there's some parts that are usable, but there's other parts which look like they're damaged. I mean, these O-rings are all the wrong size. I'm going to have to tear this one apart, but I can do that as an example. It's not a problem. This one isn't going to go back together because the shaft itself has some actual damage on it. If you can see there. So that basically, as soon as the seals go past that damage on the shaft, they just let oil out, and so it's just going to keep leaking. But I can use some of these parts in here. So the purpose for this bolt is just a way for the top cap to turn the inner shaft. There's no actual, oh, this one's totally rock solid. There's no thread on there, it's just pressed in shaft. So I need to grab a bolt, which I have lying around somewhere and I've now just misplaced. So now I've got this bolt on the shaft, and I'm using a pulley extractor. Let's get it nipped up, and doesn't take much. It shouldn't take much to force the shaft out of the nut. So this is now pushing everything through. This should now be released. You can see that everything is kind of undone on the inside. So you would expect to have the bolt and 2 washers here. They're very, very thin washers. They might look like 1. It should be 2. There we go. And then this shaft comes out from the inside, and this is the part that gets turned. The nut is pressed onto this turns, and effectively these here control the flow of oil coming through these holes here. So when this is all in place, these are actually all bent, so they wouldn't have done a very good job of locking out, but when they were in place, the pin should have ridden. Wow, yes, it's been really forced. It should not be like a Pringle. That's a very sad thing to see, because these are impossible to get. Yeah, so that should be flat. Well, it should be like a sort of a dimple. It shouldn't be all tacoed like that. This one's a bit better. Then this inside shaft, this one still looks alright. It has a bleed screw in there, which I can undo at some point, but that's not something I need to do right now. And then we've got the piston. Seals on that are all falling off. To change the top seals on this top part here, we need to undo this. This is usually done not with red Loctite. So some heat is sometimes useful, but you can actually get a thin pair of pin spanners in and undo it, and it doesn't actually leave any marks, so it's actually fine. So once that is undone, in here there's an O-ring that retains this, and then there is a shim, which is the oil control shim. It's part of the shim stack. And then you've got these basically bumpers. These should not be together. That was wrong. More bumpers, and then you've got the top cap, which has the V-groove seals in it. So this one, yeah, I mean, I can feel it's super loose anyways, and if I was reusing this, I would put new seals in this and get this back on with a bullet tool, but I'm not. But I can use certain parts from this, so this part is still good. The piston itself, the valve part of it is fine. Unfortunately, one of the lockout parts is pretty crushed. It's very hard to recover that. But there's a few bits in there which I will rescue. So that's how you can tear it down. Now putting it back together is the harder bit, making sure that everything is in the right place, and I will do that in another video. Okay. Wow, that's very stubborn. And that's this piston out. That was a lot of work. And look how disgusting that is. So this piston, despite being completely seized in there, is actually looking alright. I have to look at the inside, but yeah, I mean, it just needs a very good clean on the outside. So again, this is another part that I can reuse. I was just looking at these spares that I got, and I realized they're actually for the wrong type. They don't fit. They're the Schrader plugs. I think they actually go straight onto the fork rather than into the air cylinder. So if anybody knows how to actually get these air cylinder caps, it's not the same as the Schrader plug for DL80, which is KF237. That one is too big. Anyways, that will be me for today. So that's a teardown of this fork, and I do have various builds that I'm going to be doing soon, so I'll record those. I know it's a bit haphazard, but generally I'm not doing, you know, from start to finish all on one thing at the same time. You run into issues, you need to order parts, you have to wait for them, so it's very hard to get it all recorded. Anyways, hope this at least explains what's going on sometimes when you wonder what happens inside the fork and whether or not you can undo that top nut. The answer is no, please don't. But also, you know, if you have a dying fork and you think, oh, you're going to throw it away, hey, it's still got parts in it which might be useful. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and yeah, cheers.